Here's another one I'm going to bring back from like 15 years ago. Now, I had heard about this a couple of times, but I never really gave it the time of day. And after finally, watching it, I sort of regret not watching it sooner. Essentially, what Lake Mungo is this found footage style film that sort of dips more into the mockumentary style that found footage sort of is already. So, what it's portrayed as, it's sort of telling this not real story in a very real way. Like, it's portrayed as if it's a real interview or a real news segment on like 60 Minutes. And that's where the uncomfortability comes from, because you get hit with this sort of, is it a movie? Is it a documentary? Is it a news report? Am I watching, Channel 11 News that is just 1 hour of just reporting this one ridiculous incident, or this compilation of many interviews over the course of the history of this case of what the film is kind of talking about? It's very well done. It comes out of Australia. It didn't really get a lot of financial sort of stability to kind of, give it any sort of foundation financially. I think it cost like $7 million, but it didn't make. No, I think that's reversed. I think it cost like, I don't remember what the numbers were off the top of my head, but I do remember that the approval rating, the critical reception for this film. Now, you don't see many of these because Rotten Tomatoes, I hate using Rotten Tomatoes sometimes as the sort of Geiger counter for, what the critics are saying or how the ratings are for a film, but it truly is one of the better tools to utilize, and it's often really good with its decisions. So, Lake Mungo randomly has a 96% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. 96%. Do you know how many films are even in the 90s? There aren't many, especially considering films made within the last 10 years, let alone 15 years. It takes a lot to get a film in the 70s and the 80s. This film is in the 90s. So I don't care what its budget was. This film is completely worth it for revisiting for what is essentially a 2008 film. So what happens is this family is visiting this, I think it's another lake, but it isn't the lake that the title of the film is based off of. But they're visiting this lake and they're going swimming, and then eventually the daughter, these parents, a son and a daughter. The daughter goes into the water, never comes back out. So essentially she drowns, but her body isn't found until much so later into the sort of interview or the search for what happened to her. And so they're trying to kind of make sense of everything because a lot of creepy things start happening after this incident. So when they're going through the process of this interview, they learn, or they express that they went and saw a psychic, and the psychic came over, and there's footage of what happened when that psychic was there. And I even get a little bit of a chill because I remember the scares are just subtle, because it's almost like those things that happen where you see things later on that you catch in like video footage that you take, like home camera footage. Think of any of those videos that are like online, like on YouTube, and that creepiness you get where you notice something in the video that nobody else does until they watch it later. This is sort of the feeling they try to get with their scare moments, because you watch a scene. So they have like this scene where the psychic's in the kitchen with them and they're talking about the daughter. Nothing is off about that scene. Then they go back and they say, well, we look back at the footage. And then when they show the footage again, they zoom in on like a corner and there's like a figure standing there. And it's just very creepy and very unsettling for a film that's, it's supposed to be creepy and unsettling because it's a horror film. But your brain is being tricked because it's not presented like a normal horror film. It's presented in the way of this pseudo interview thing. You're almost like watching the recap of this entire. It's almost like watching like Tiger King or Making a Murderer. It's like watching any of these other things, even though it's pure fiction. This is not based on any sort of real story or real happening of anything. These aren't real this isn't a real footage collaboration of things that actually happened to a particular family. It's all bullshit. But it's presented so believably that you get caught off guard when they do catch things. So you're not getting jump scares. You're not getting bam in your face scares that make the music heightened up. You're getting creepy instances where things are getting pointed out to you after the fact and making you realize like you gotta pay attention even when you think you don't have to pay attention. As this story progresses and they learn more about all of these, you also start to learn that there's also this sort of hoax angle to it, where the brother, to kind of give his parents some kind of closure, fakes a lot of the quote-unquote sightings that they catch on camera so they can believe that the daughter is like at peace in some way. But then that gets overshadowed by a lot of the other footage that gets added and all these other turns the story sort of takes, where they get this family that she babysat involved, and apparently she was sleeping with the father. And then there's another side story where there's other neighbors that were at the lake at the same time, all leading up to the discovery of her phone, I believe is where they find the footage, where essentially this is where Lake Mungo comes from. Lake Mungo is a place where her and her fellow students went on a school trip to, that is an actual place, I believe, in Australia, but it's meant to be some sort of like Indian burial ground, I think, or just some really haunted burial ground in a way, or just a really creepy desert in some way. I can't remember exactly what the point of the desert was, but they were meant to visit it, sort of camp out, enjoy it. And when they find this video, they discover that she had experienced a lot of creepy things out there in the Lake Mungo area late at night, where she sort of was attacked by what looked like her doppelganger, almost as if there was this clash of two worlds, this sort of spiritual world where a second her existed and then the real world. And now this is all dropped very much closer to the end of the film, that eventually leads the family to just kind of say, we're now going to sort of move on. We're going to pack up. We're moving out of this house. We don't think our daughter is ever returning. If she's still in this house, she can stay here. If she is a spirit. And again, all like they're interviewing with Barbara Walters. And by the very end of it, it starts going through all of these clips again, where it sort of feels like, what's that Netflix show? The Haunting of Hill House, where they pointed out all the ghosts they hid in the background, like in articles and stuff were put out for it, where if you didn't catch the ghost behind the window in the garden when they're fighting in the kitchen, bam, there's a ghost right there. Oh, you didn't catch the ghost hiding behind the staircase when they're running up the stairs to save somebody, bam, there's a ghost right there. That's sort of what it is, and then the movie does that as well at the end, is to kind of add to the creepiness that even the ones they pointed out, there were more there. It's just this really fun film to watch because it's different. And I think that's why it has such high praise from literally anywhere you go. I don't think there's one bad thing I've heard said about this film, and it's well deserved of all of its positive feedback. It is so entertaining, so unique. It's very fresh. Even now, talking about it 15 years later, it's still very fresh to see something like this being done, because you're talking about this not really going so far, and it deserved to go far. So hopefully this is something you have seen before. If not, you should definitely check this out for something that's a little bit more unique in the horror movie genre, especially the found footage genre.